thank you for your leadership and that wonderful introduction. And Jamie, thank you. And thank you as well, Veronica, for allowing everyone in your household. I don't think we have anyone tall enough to hit your chandelier, so that's good. But I can't tell you how meaningful it is to have all you there. And thank you, person wearing the Viking shirt right there. Okay, so it would make me feel at home. And I also wanted to mention, I think Trav and Mel, some of our other, who else was here from the party? There were a number of people that were there with us. We just filed in South Carolina. Really excited about that. The first in the South primary. And also wanted to thank Trav and the whole party for making me feel welcome here on many visits I've had, with many more to come. So we are on a roll in the Unity for America campaign. We have been going up in the polls, mostly because people have been able to meet me and they've been able to understand what I'm talking about and get my very focused message. And that is that I don't want to be the president for half of America. I want to be the president for all of America. And that includes the state of South Carolina. And I think for anyone that thinks we should write off, of our party, write off states in the South, maybe they didn't see what just happened in Kentucky. Maybe they did not see when we now got the results in, and in fact, Mitch McConnell now has a Democratic governor. That is a fact. And then you add that, the re-election of the Democratic governor in Louisiana, and what's really interesting is that in both states, Donald Trump had come the day before for a rally. So my question is, South Carolina, where should we send him next? That kind of worked out. That's part of it. And then you also look at Virginia, what happened there, where just recently with an incredibly diverse group of candidates, I helped a number of them. We took back the state house and the state senate. Yay. And so when you look at these voters that come out, a fired up Democratic base, a fired up African American community who would not be fired up. When you look at what Donald Trump's been saying, when after Charlottesville, he says there are two sides. Well, there are not two sides when one side is the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah. There is only one side, and that is the American side. That's it, America. So that is, we've seen that, but what else have we seen? Well, we've seen our candidates who were not real celebrity candidates, they just happened to be people that people trusted. We have seen them bring with them independents, moderate Republicans in these states, and so what I say is I'll tell you some very profound things. We better not screw this up, okay? That is because we have people that are coming with us. We have a consensus forming in this country, and it is about an economic check, yes. And we've seen that with the Medicaid issues going on here, with what the debate over the Affordable Care Act in Kentucky. What that was about was a Republican governor who was saying, no, 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 I'm not going to help with any of this. No, I'm not. And a Democratic candidate, the new incoming governor, who basically said this isn't right. We support the Affordable Care Act. We support Obamacare. And in fact, what we've now found out is that Obamacare is 10 points more popular in the nation than the President of the United States. So that's what we have to remember about this election, that we can't screw up this coalition that is forming. And it is an economic check on those issues I just mentioned on pharmaceutical prices, where I've been leading the way now for years in the Senate to take on the pharmaceutical companies. It is that. It is affordability of college. It is infrastructure like you need here in South Carolina. It's rural areas that have their own share of poverty, including very much in this state. But it is also a patriotic check. It's a patriotism check. It's a value check, because a bunch of people around this country have basically said, we don't want this guy in the White House. We don't want a president that when he gets on TV at a rally, we have to turn the sound down because we don't want our kids hearing what the president says. And there's a lot of people in this room that remember that no matter who the president was, you watched them or you had your family, and you get a little mad at them sometimes, that is true. but you still watch them out of respect for the office, and because as citizens we needed to be informed of what's going on. And that has just completely flipped with this president because of how he treats people, how he goes after people, how he divides people. So my background is a lot different than Donald Trump, something I would look forward to saying on the debate stage to him. I'm the granddaughter of an iron ore miner who worked 1,500 feet underground his whole life, saved money in a coffee can in the basement to send my dad to a 2-year community college, which is why part of the reason I'm such a big believer in these 1- and 2-year degrees, especially when you look at a lot of the job openings we have in our country. My dad went on to get a 4-year degree from the University of Minnesota, which was almost undefeated, the Gophers, but that's a whole other story. At least you don't have a team named after rodents, but we did. So that was what my dad did. Then my mom grew up in Milwaukee, which is going to be the site of our next convention. And she wanted to be a teacher. They had no money in her family, and she ended up moving to Minnesota in part because they had a strong teachers union. And she ended up teaching 2nd grade until she was 70 years old. So I stand before you as the granddaughter of an iron ore miner, the daughter of a teacher and a newspaperman, the first woman elected to the U.S. Senate from the state of Minnesota, and a candidate for President of the United States. That is because we live in a country of shared dreams, that no matter where you come from or who you know or where you worship, that you should be able to make it in the United States of America. And yet we have a president that wakes up every day and tries to tear us apart. He goes after immigrants. He goes after people of color. He goes after the entire city of Baltimore. When things go wrong, he starts blaming people. He blames the head of the Federal Reserve. He blames Barack Obama. He blames the entire country of Denmark. Who does that? That's what he does. I just truly believe that we need to cross the river of our divides to get a higher plane in our politics, because we can't just eke by a victory in 4 in the morning. If we do that, what's going to happen with Joe Cunningham, who thank you for electing Joe Cunningham, your state, thank you.
Baby steps, we're getting there.
Baby steps, exactly, and giving us the great Jim Clyburn. Thank you for that. But we have to be able to re-elect Joe, to be able to add senators so that we can send Mitch McConnell packing. Yes. We can't just win by a little bit. We need to win big. And that includes every Senate race across the country that we have to take seriously after what we just saw happen in Kentucky. We really do. And after what we saw in Alabama when Doug Jones won that Senate seat in the state of Alabama, we have to take these races, including this Senate race, very right. Exactly, Jamie. So that's our focus. And when you do that, when you win big, you bring people with you, and that allows us to govern. So it's about winning campaigns, yes, but it's about also how we govern in America. So we take on these big challenges that have been in front of us for years, and we've been unable to get at them. They are things like, in addition to health care that I just brought up, which I believe the best thing to do is a nonprofit public option that would allow competition with insurance companies so we can bring the rates down. I personally don't think we should kick 149 million Americans off their current insurance in 4 years. That's one of the reasons I didn't get on that bill. But that doesn't mean that I don't have big, bold ideas, because I lived through the debate over the Affordable Care Act, and I know it was just a beginning and not an end. Barack Obama would tell you that. It was a beginning and not an end. Affordability of college, what do I favor? I figure if multimillionaires can refinance their yachts, then students should be able to refinance their student loans. I figure that we should make a focus on connecting our education system with the jobs out there. That means revamping and upgrading our efforts when it comes to K through 12, when it comes to preschool and child care. We need to be able to compete in the world economy. That means upping teacher salaries, and I have a plan and show how I'll pay for it and have a deadline. I like those things. That means making sure we have good infrastructure for our schools, but it also means looking at what are the jobs that we have now and in the future. And you know this in this state. Fastest growing jobs actually are 1- and 2-year degrees. Some of those jobs pay really well. electricians, plumbers. And by the way, we are not going to have a shortage of CEOs in the next few years, or even MBAs. We are going to have a shortage of plumbers. We are going to have a shortage of electricians. We're going to have 74,000 job openings for electricians. We're going to have over 1 million openings in this country in the next 10 years for home health care workers. We are going to have over 100,000 openings for nursing assistants. So how do you get people to go into those areas where we know the jobs are, plus get the advanced degrees that we need for advancing our economy? There we go. That means an alarm that I'm right. We have to and so for me, what that means is, what that means is making sure that we have those 1- and 2-year degrees free, that we double the Pell Grant, so things like our historic black colleges for things like the people that most need the help, that's where the money is going, right? And when you double Pell Grants from $6,000 to $12,000 a year, that's a lot of money. When you say $50,000 instead of that being the limit on families' income, you go up to $100,000. That is going to cover a lot more people to not just get loans, but to get grants. Instead of covering rich kids, and I'm sorry, but some of these plans, that's what they do. They say that about 10% of the people in state colleges now and state universities, their families make over $200,000 a year. And so that is my issue with some of these proposals. I don't think they'll pass, and I don't think they're the right thing to do, because I think we should be connecting our economy with the degrees that we want kids to get. And there's so much we can do on loan repayment to make that work. Because right now, for our teachers and other public servants, the person that's screwing them up needs to be fired. Her name is Betsy DeVos. And anyway, there are so many. I love talking about these things because I see these things as opportunities. I see investment in technology so we can do something about climate change. That is an opportunity for us. It is the idea of going after Alzheimer's. There was just Today Show just did something that featured my work on this. We have 14 million people are going to have Alzheimer's by the year 2050 in this country. It is the most expensive disease out there. And yet this administration has just failed to take on that issue, as well as the big issue of long-term care. We're going to have a doubling of our senior population in just a few decades, and everyone should care about it, not just seniors, because it's something that's coming. Eventually everyone gets old. And if we don't shore up Social Security and make it easier to get long-term care insurance, make it easier to get long-term care, it's going to be an issue for everyone. So these are things you don't always hear on the debate stage, but these are things that real people are talking about out there. And this president has just neglected time and time again. So my argument to you is one: we need a leader that takes on the challenges in front of them and can actually get things done. Yeah. I have passed over 100 bills as the lead Democrat since I've gotten to the U.S. Senate. Yeah. Not volleyball resolutions, but real good. Number 2, you need someone that can not just win, but win big and bring with her the U.S. Senate, and don't you like saying her? That's yes. The U.S. Senate, and bring with her these key House districts like the one right here that Joe Cunningham holds right now. That means someone that can win not just with our fired up base, but also bring in independents and moderate Republicans, can win in suburban areas and can also win in rural areas. And that has been my hallmark since I've gotten to the Senate, where I have won, yes, every single congressional district 3 times in a row in a state that Donald Trump almost won. It was Hillary's lowest percentage of any state she won. And I won that area big time, 24 points in our state. But I also won every congressional district, the most rural of rural, the most red of red, not once, not twice, but 3 times, including Michelle Bachmann's. Okay? I have won that district. So I just think that kind of track record is important. I also think when you look at the momentum we have, it's because people have been listening to me in the debates. They've heard my message. They get that if they're looking for a break from the noise and the nonsense and they're tired of the extremes, that they have a home with me. And that is what I've been saying everywhere. And we are really excited that we're expanding in South Carolina. It was one of the first places that I visited after I announced my candidacy. and I had an incredible good reception here with a lot of people, and I know I just need to get my name out there more and my message out there more, and I need you all to be ambassadors for me to do that, because I don't have the $31 million ad buy of Michael Bloomberg. As I famously noted on the debate stage recently, for me, I've always had less money than my opponents, but I've always defied expectations and won, including when I first ran for the U.S. Senate, and I set what is an all-time Senate record still. I raised $17,000 from ex-boyfriends. And as my husband has pointed out, it's not an expanding base. Anything, hopefully. Oh, thank you. Seriously. Oh yes, but you see, I can't get that. I can't, because it's not an expanding base, I'm never going to get to that $31 million of the ad buy of Michael Bloomberg. But we are doing this the old-fashioned way, by meeting people, by gradually gaining support. And at this point in these races, a lot of people never thought Bill Clinton was going to end up emerging as our candidate. A lot of people never thought that Jimmy Carter, and that's for sure, was going to be our candidate. And they both ended up not only being our candidate, but being our winning candidate. And that is why we have South Carolina and Nevada and Iowa and New Hampshire as these early states, because it allows the voters in these states to really listen to the candidates and make decisions, and really as basically keep taking the temperature for the whole nation. So you have an obligation for South Carolina, but you also have an obligation because you get that you need a candidate that can really win. And you base that on a lot of your own experience in your own state with what wins and what wins big. And so that's my message to you. I ask for your support. You can go on amyklobuchar.com and check out our 100-day plan, which is my favorite thing we've done, which is over 130 things that a president can do without Congress and legally. And that is everything from closing the boyfriend loophole so that domestic abusers can't go out and get AK-47s, to doing a number of things on climate change, like getting back into the International Climate Change Agreement, to some changes with immigration that we can make immediately, to our farm policy and some of the things that have gone wrong for rural America, including a bunch of oil waivers, which is a whole nother story, that has hurt our biofuel business, which you have some in here in this state. There is just so much that we can do that will mean investing in the people of our country. So I want to thank you. I'd love to take some questions. We have a big group, so maybe we'll just do a few, and then we've got a bowl. I kind of like this because this means sometimes people that don't raise their hand feel better doing it this way, and then you have a. Let's see what we got there. What is your position? This is from Stacy. What is your position on disproportionate impact of HIV on African Americans in this state and across the nation? Yeah, so that's a travesty, and I think a lot of this, the reason that we are fighting so hard, many of us, to protect the Affordable Care Act, and I'll start with that, is that made it so much worse because people were being kicked off their insurance for pre-existing condition. And certainly HIV and the impact that it's had in the African American community, that is Exhibit A for what we're talking about here. And as we speak, Donald Trump is trying to repeal this. This isn't made up. He's filed a lawsuit in Texas. So that's the first thing. The second is research and the kind of drugs we know that work, like PrEP, and some of the things that have been shown to be so effective with HIV. And to invest in that kind of research and make sure those kinds of drugs are covered by insurance will be really important to me. The third thing is stigma, which people feel in the African American community, and they feel really all over this country. And I've actually talked to people, amazing stories of when they finally came and said, you know what, I have this disease, but I want to be a functioning person here, and I want to work, and I want to vote. And when they have told their stories, there's one story I heard in particular of a guy that had hid it for 10 years. And he didn't get the kind of health care he should need. He didn't get the kind of help that he would need, and then he got the right health care. He told people, he was able to feel better about himself, and now he runs a business and employs people. There are stories like that all over the place.
Stacey Jennings, who's asked that question, she's the mistress of ceremonies at a storytelling at the State House.
Okay, so that is part of it. Oh, that's great. So little did I know that that answer would be, where are you, Stacey? Okay, very good, thank you. But that is, so you get it, why that part of it's really important, particularly with the African American community. The other thing that's exciting on this front with the new developments, with things that have happened with not just prevention, is the international work that's going on. And the work we've done in Africa with our foundations and with USAID and others, that has to continue. And I am a strong supporter of foreign aid. So it is something that this president has tried to demolish. And it's actually, as General Mattis, when he was in the administration, once said that what he didn't get in foreign aid or in diplomacy, he would simply buy in bullets, because it becomes an issue for America's security if we cut back. Okay?
Peggy's question and Cindy's first question are similar.
Oh, I love how I've never had anyone triage. Very, very cool. Okay, yeah, so this is all about, yeah, they're similar. It's about mending relationships and things that have been completely obliterated in terms of relationships across the world. The first question's about our allies. And I think as president, in my first 100 days, I would go and visit our allies and make clear that we stand with our allies and not dictators, that we stand with innocents and not with tyrants.
Yes.
And one of the ways you do that is by reasserting those relationships with our allies. You do it by rejoining international agreements, like renegotiating ourselves back into the Iranian nuclear agreement, which has made things a whole lot dangerous. More dangerous in the Mideast. This was one of our #1 goals of foreign policy, was to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And now I supported that agreement, even though I didn't think it was perfect. Some people didn't, but almost everyone agreed that looked at this, that it was dumb to get out of it precipitously, and that's what this president did. Now we've given power to China and Russia, and we've left our allies holding the bag. Another agreement, climate change agreement, Syria and Nicaragua were the only 2 countries not in it when Donald Trump announced that he wanted to get out. Now they are in it. So we are the only ones that are not in that agreement. Nuclear agreement with Russia. While they are bad actors and they cheat, and Putin has done horrible things on the international stage. Again, Donald Trump should not have gotten out of that nuclear agreement, because that only allows Putin to do worse things. So I would restart those negotiations. There's a second nuclear treaty that's going to be coming up right at the beginning of a new president's term. So those are some examples there. And it's going to hurt us economically in the long term if we don't have better relationships. Divide on immigration policy. That's something a president can do herself right away. Stop the separation of families at the border. But you've got to do more than that, and that is comprehensive immigration reform. You think of the workers that we need in our fields and in our factories, what we could do when it comes to more small businesses. Immigrants don't diminish America, they are America, and that is why I have been a strong supporter of comprehensive immigration reform. Then the bigger sort of policy question about our own politics here, and how we're going to break through that gridlock. As I mentioned, I've done that every single day of my life. I've sponsored a number of bills and passed a number of bills with Republican senators. That doesn't mean that I agree with everything they said, and it certainly doesn't mean that I don't think we need a change in leadership in the Senate. We do. We are not going to get many of these big things done if we don't make that change. But I still think we need to change the tone of our politics. We need to stop looking down at our phones and look, I can say that because no one's looking at their phones. It's embarrassing. We need to stop looking down at our phones and look at each other. We need to be willing to have, did anyone have a civil talk about politics at Thanksgiving? I bet some people did. I just think it's important that we try as best we can. Now, it depends on the people at the table. but we try our best every day because we are so much bigger than this. We have always been bigger than this. And you think of a president that literally looks for wedges every day. When you think of what true leadership is trying to bring people together. I always think about and this all really is combined. Everything, all of those questions are really about the same thing. And when people ask you about that impeachment hearing that's going on, yes, that's a legal proceeding. And I personally will never forget the words of Lieutenant Colonel Vinneman, who said to his father, you know what, it's okay, Dad, this is a country where you can tell the truth, and you're okay. That's what this country should be. This is a country where, in the words of one of my mentors, Walter Mondo, when he looked back at the 4 years of the Carter-Mondo administration, which weren't perfect, but these words were etched on the wall of the Carter Presidential Library. It was him looking back after they lost in those 4 years, and he said this: we told the truth, we obeyed the law, we kept the peace. We told the truth, we obeyed the law, we kept the peace. That is the minimum that we should expect from a president of the United States. So when you look at all of these things, the international, everything he's done, what it always is about him putting his private interests, his political interests, his partisan interests in front of the interests of this country. Best example of that, probably something that people don't remember, but when he was at the G20 and he was asked about Russia invading our election, he looked at Vladimir Putin and he made a joke about it. You think about the thousands of South Carolinians who have died protecting our democracy and democracies across the world, like in World War II. That's what that was about. You think about the hundreds of thousands of Americans have given their lives for that ideal of a democracy. You think about those 4 little girls that died at the height of the civil rights movement in that church in Birmingham, Alabama. Innocent girls, just because it was a fight over democracy and who could be part of the democracy. This is not a joke. This is on us right now to uphold that principle of democracy, to be what Barbara Jordan once called a country as good as its promise. She said what Americans want is something very simple. They want a country as good as its promise. So let's make good on that promise. Yeah, we'll take a few more. It's such a good ending, but we'll do like a lightning rod. Okay, here we go, lightning rod. Student debt and Medicare for all. Oh, those are easy subjects, and prescriptions for LDO. I think I went over the student debt issue and how important this is and what we need to do to make it more affordable. And by the way, I would pay for that with changes from that corporate tax bill and the capital gains rate. I have made very clear, which I think is going to be helpful in this state, honestly, how we're going to pay for everything that we do. Because Donald Trump has been treating us like poker chips in one of his bankrupt casinos. And he has been adding to the debt without any accountability. So everything we do, I think our party, I know we always have to be the responsible ones. We were under Bill Clinton, we were under Barack Obama. But I think that we need to keep doing that, and that's part of what I do. Okay. Prescriptions, we talked about Medicare for all. Prescriptions, this is actually something, and she says for seniors in this question. We have in law right now a ban on negotiating less expensive prices under Medicare. Think of how crazy that is. The pharmaceutical companies got that in there. It's not for Medicaid. Medicaid gets much better price they can negotiate. Not for VA. VA gets much better prices they can negotiate. We don't want to change that. But what we do want to say is for 43 million seniors, I bet you can get a pretty good deal. And that is a huge negotiating block.
I think they're telling us again.
What?
You're good? Okay.
Good? Okay.
Okay. Anyway, that is a huge negotiating block, and so we want to be able to allow those seniors to negotiate better prices. And I lead that bill. I've led it for the last 10 years. I have 34 senators on it right now. And when I'm president, we will get it done. We will get it done. Also, less expensive drugs from other countries, putting a cap on the prices for common drugs. That's what the bill that they've just put forward in the House would do. It would save taxpayers over $350 billion. You know, it's common drugs like insulin. There's not enough competition. That's been what's going on. So I'm really excited to work on this.
Education.
Yep, I think we did most, we talked about this, yes.
Yes, it's got-
I'll help our children to catch up, with the, yes, and a lot of this is making sure it's affordable and we're preparing our kids, for the jobs that we have now. And I head up a group, the Diversify Tech Caucus, and also an Entrepreneurship Caucus with your other Republican Senator, Tim Scott, I do that. But I think it is really, really important that we take on this issue so that these jobs are available for African Americans, for people of color, for women. Because when you look, as you look to the future, where these high-paying jobs are, this is where they are. They're in these areas, and we want to encourage kids to go in these areas. And so if you want to look at how do we change the pie some, a lot of it is making sure that we're diversifying technology jobs and we're diversifying a lot of the high-paid medical jobs. So I think it's something, as president, I'll actually be able to get done. So, okay, common sense gun legislation. There are 3 bills right now sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. Universal background checks, really important. Something that the majority of Trump owners favor. Trump gun owners favor. But the majority of Trump voters favor. The majority of gun owners favor. Common sense background checks. The only thing stopping us right now is Mitch McConnell. It really is. That is it. Because the House voted for it, because of people like Joe Cunningham and others you put in, and that's sitting there on his desk. Closing the boyfriend loophole that I already mentioned. That is sitting on his desk in the Violence Against Women Act. That is my bill that I've been leading, the closing the boyfriend loophole. And the third one is the Charleston loophole. And you know exactly what that was. Giving police the time after that horrific shooting where people are just at church worshiping and this white nationalist comes in. That would simply give the police the amount of time they need to be able to do the background check. Those are 3 common sense bills. They're sitting on his desk. As president, I will get them done, but I would like to get them done sooner. And that's why this pressure has to keep mounting on Mitch McConnell.
Very good.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. You guys have been tremendous. I'm excited. We'll maybe do some pictures, right? Okay, very good. Kim, should we do them right? Where do you
Let's
want?
give Senator Klobuchar another one.
Kim, just before we start, I do want to